So however imperfect the process was up to this moment, I think we have learned from hindsight of history that it may actually be in the interest of the country to continue from where he stopped. Because if you look at the episode between Obasanjo's regime, all the contracts he awarded, Yaradua came, overturned all of them, and started his own afresh. Midway into that, he got into health crisis and died. Jonathan came, started all over again, and we're here. So any attempt to reverse this whole thing, I do understand that anybody coming in may want to, but if we go back again, we are going to lose 2 to 3. We are now talking about post 2015 before any other thing can happen.
In other words, it wasn't the man that was the problem. They had a program to follow, and that program should continue. Am I correct?
Of course, it was the face of the reform, so it was naturally going to take all the blows. There was a program on ground. This program has been there. Obasanjo's government passed the power sector reform, 2005-2006, and started the NIPP projects and the entire privatization project, the entire privatization program for PHCN. So these things are documented. These things are on the ground. The president has a roadmap, and the roadmap is ultimately to privatize all these entities. There's nothing that will change if you bring a new minister now, because what will the new minister do? Say, okay, we are no longer privatizing PHCN. No, it's not going to happen.
So that exercise continues.
It continues.
Now, let me take you to another part of this whole issue. It's not often that we find a Nigerian resigning his appointment because of a reason such as this. How do you regard this, looking at the reasons why Professor Nnaji resigned?
Well, I did some little investigation here and there, and it came suddenly, as we all knew, but all along the intrigues had been there. Of course, I cannot mention names, but there were some powerful people that wanted to bid for this same power plant, the Afan power plant, and the Enugu distribution company. And their bids came late, and they couldn't meet the deadline. And
no, that was not
like
Nnaji's fault, was it?
But that was like the final straw, because the process was transparent. We are not talking of just a technical committee made up of some unknown persons. This technical committee had representatives from the Ministry of Water Resources, from the Ministry of Power, and then UK provided technical advisors, US, Canada. So we are talking of, I think it was even a 7-person committee. So it was not something that was done under the table. You had security operatives, EFCC, ICPC, SSS that monitored the process. So it was not something that anybody could really manipulate, at least the way we know manipulation. Unfortunately, it had to consume Professor Nnaji, because there are a lot of issues that have always cropped up around this conflict of interest. It was just a very easy thing, and I think he was under tremendous pressure when I learned he was the one who even said, look, this O&M Solutions of Pakistan that is bidding for our farm, they once advised us, they once worked for us at Geometric, that they were not even aware. They said it was one who made these facts known to them. I don't know how true that is, but that is what someone told me. So it's like he saw a problem and he tried to come clean and say, look, I have interest in this. The Eastern Electric that put in a bid for the Enugu distribution company, Geometric owns some shares, a minority stake, but still there's an interest there. And Alanji also made this known to to the National Council on Privatization, but obviously it was too late to save him. But I think this is, this saves everybody the trouble of conflict of interest and all those issues. And at the end of the day, we won't need Minister of Power again. By the time we are through with the process that has started now, if it is not reversed, the Minister of Power will become useless. We used to have the Minister of Communications sitting on top of NITEL. Now, it doesn't work anymore. So maybe Nnaji will be the last powerful Minister of Power that.
Well, I think if I just may add, talking about what lessons we're learning from this, I don't even think, unfortunately, that we're going to learn much from it. I think people are seeing it as a case of not covering your tracks well. So if I have to do it, maybe
you'll be more clever.
If you use a thin cloth to blind yourself, you have to thicken the cloth next time so that it sees. And I see some sort of Abacha experience playing around here, because if you look at the so-called loots that were retrieved from Abacha, they were the ones that you could trace quite easily to the treasury. But those who were there before him and those who came after him, they were very, very discreet in their own looting. At the stage, Ribadu came forward and said, look, this man is very, just talking about not mentioning me, that this man is very crafty. We have looked all over the world, we couldn't see his hand. So I think it's unfortunately the kind of lessons, people learn from this. And as Simon said earlier, if we want to progress from this, I think it was high time the presidency, develops a conflict of interest policy, or even some code of conduct. Anybody you are appointing into this position, you make these things very clear. And which also reminds one what they say before somebody is appointed and confirmed, that the security agencies go through screening. And I'm wondering the kind of template they use in the screening. And as some of us know, is the one anybody who played a role in pro-democracy. Because if you go, when I pass through the airport, my name still rings, and then they look, and that's the kind of thing they do. They don't really investigate people's interest in the sectors that they are going to oversee.
But his interest was it was upfront.
Sure, that's to show you that conflict of interest is not an issue. It was just because the whole thing had become too controversial, or if we want to go by Simon's suggestion, there were forceful interests that the presidency couldn't ignore, and had to succumb to this, if only to create an environment for them to now resubmit the bid. So what lessons are we learning? Be careful next time. Not that this thing is bad. Don't do it.
That shall not be caught.
That shall not be caught. The 11th commandment. So, all the brouhaha that his presence on that seat caused, now that he has gone, are we going to see a reduction in the crisis in that sector? In other words, was he the problem?
Certainly it was not the problem. Certainly it was not the problem. Whoever is taking over now is going to face similar problems. But like I always say, the government must get a way of getting the buy-in of not just Nigerians, but the critical stakeholders in any project. They have to be part of the agenda from day one. They are making inputs. They are raising issues. They are raising questions that will be very helpful in formulating the policy, in implementing the program. The way government has always run is, this is what I want to do. There's no alternative. You can go to hell. Now that automatically brings opposition. And you are dealing with people who can bring this whole thing to a halt. Now look at what happened recently. This is a different issue over the payment of oil subsidy. There was a fuel crisis in Abuja because the tanker driver said, okay, we are not going to lift. So you are dealing with people who can cause problem, who can cause real problem and stall the program. So there is no way. You have to involve them at every stage. Dialogue with them, get their input is very, very important. That is how the program can run smoothly, because they cannot claim not to know what you wanted to do or what you were planning to do, because they were part of it. So the crisis will continue except the government adopts a different method of doing handling the workers.
Mr. Chukwu, first among the problems of the workers is their entitlement. And that is a big issue, a matter of money. And the professor, when he came here, gave us some fantabulous figures as to what they were asking for, what it would amount to for government to look for.
400 billion.